He walked away, suitcase in hand, heart heavy. He told himself it was the right thing, for both of them. She wasn't holding him back, not really. But he had dreams, ambitions. He needed to chase them, to soar high above the clouds. He convinced himself that love could be a cage, that routine was the death of passion. He craved the unknown, the thrill of the open road. As he hailed a cab, he looked back one last time, her silhouette in the doorway, a silent plea. The weight of his freedom settled on his shoulders, heavier than any luggage. The city lights blurred, a kaleidoscope of excitement and anonymity. He threw himself into his work, the thrill of the new, the challenge of the unknown, just as he'd always dreamed. But the victories felt hollow, the applause distant. His carefully constructed world felt strangely empty, the silence in his apartment deafening. He hadn't expected this gaping hole. He'd thought he'd left with a clean slate, ready for a new chapter. Instead, he felt like a page torn from a book, adrift and incomplete. He hadn't called her, not once. Pride, perhaps? Or fear? Fear of what he might hear in her voice. Fear of the truth he was desperately trying to outrun. He saw her everywhere. In the curve of a stranger's smile, in the melody of a forgotten song. Ghosts of shared moments haunted him, whispering of what they had lost. He remembered their laughter echoing through the park, the way her hand fit perfectly in his, the quiet joy of their everyday rituals, once mundane, now achingly precious. He'd traded warmth for emptiness, familiarity for the cold comfort of strangers, and in the dead of night when the city finally slept, he felt the full weight of his colossal mistake. Regret was a slow, insidious burn. It started as a flicker, a whisper at the edge of his thoughts. But it grew, fueled by memories and what-ifs. He saw her face in every crowd, heard her laughter in the rain. The world seemed to conspire against him, reminding him of what he'd thrown away. His ambition, once a burning flame, now felt like cold ashes. What was the point of reaching the summit if there was no one to share the view? He had it all, the success, the freedom he craved, yet he'd never felt so utterly, desperately alone. He found himself drawn back to their old haunts, the cafe with the mismatched chairs, the bookstore where they'd spend hours browsing. He'd linger across the street from her apartment, heart hammering in his chest. Just a glimpse, that's all he wanted. To see her smile, to know she was happy. But happiness was a fragile thing. What if seeing him brought back pain? What right did he have to disrupt her life, to stir up the past? He was a coward, he knew, hiding in the shadows, haunted by the ghost of their love. He came close, so close to picking up the phone, to composing a message, words of apology, of longing, of regret, but the words wouldn't come. What could he say? How could he possibly explain the turmoil in his soul, the depth of his remorse? He imagined her voice cold and distant. The possibility of her rejection was unbearable. And what if she had moved on, found someone else who could give her the love he'd so carelessly discarded? The thought was like a knife to his chest. He retreated into himself, the echo of his unmade call a constant reminder of his cowardice. He wrestled with the past, with his conscience. Could a love shattered by betrayal ever be rebuilt? Was forgiveness even possible after the pain he had caused? He remembered the look in her eyes, the night he left. Betrayal, heartbreak, a flicker of something else he couldn't quite place. Hope? Or was it simply the reflection of his own desperate longing? He knew he didn't deserve her forgiveness. He'd made his choice, and now he had to live with the consequences. But the thought of her living without his love, without him, was an agony he couldn't bear. He had to know, he had to try, to mend the bridge he had so recklessly destroyed. He stood outside her door. The familiar chipped paint, the potted geraniums, a lump formed in his throat. He raised his hand to knock, then hesitated. A silent prayer escaped his lips, a plea for forgiveness, for a second chance, for a miracle. He knew it wouldn't be easy. That rebuilding trust would be a long and arduous journey, but he was willing to take the first step, to offer his heart, battered and bruised, at her feet. He only hoped it wasn't too late, that the embers of their love, however faint, could still be rekindled. He knocked, a simple rap on the door, echoing the frantic beat of his heart. He waited, an eternity suspended in the space between breaths. The porch light flickered, casting long shadows across his face, a physical manifestation of his inner turmoil. He closed his eyes, bracing himself for the unknown. He didn't know what the future held, whether forgiveness or rejection awaited him. But as the first rays of dawn pierced the darkness, he felt a glimmer of hope. He'd spent his life chasing dreams. Now he realized true happiness lay in the quiet moments, in the embrace of the one he loved.